Heavenly Father, I pray for everyone watching this video right now. May you bless them with peace, joy, and breakthroughs in their lives. Amen. Hello, my wonderful family. I am so glad and grateful to have you here with me today. Your support means the world, and I truly don't take it for granted. Before we dive into today's powerful story, please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, drop a comment below to share your thoughts, and of course, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update from this channel. I'm sorry, but your card has been declined. Maya Rodriguez felt her cheeks burn as the cashier's words echoed through the campus bookstore. Behind her, a line of students shifted impatiently, their designer backpacks and latest smartphones a stark reminder of the world she was desperately trying to belong to but could never afford. Could you try it again? Maybe there's a mistake. There wasn't a mistake. Maya knew exactly why her card was declined. Her account had $23.47 in it, and the textbook she needed for her economics midterm cost $347. She'd been hoping for a miracle, or at least a banking error in her favor. "I'm really sorry," the cashier said, lowering her voice with the kind of pity that made Maya want to disappear. "Would you like me to hold the book for you?" Maya shook her head, fighting back tears. "No, thank you." She walked out of the bookstore with as much dignity as she could muster, clutching her worn messenger bag and trying to ignore the whispers behind her. This was her reality at Westfield University, brilliant enough to earn a full academic scholarship, but still poor enough that buying a textbook could derail her entire month's budget. Maya found her usual spot under the old oak tree behind the library, where she could eat her peanut butter sandwich in peace and pretend to study from photocopied pages, while other students complained about their newest gadgets breaking. That's where she first saw him. He sat by the campus fountain, maybe 30 feet away, with a cardboard sign that read, "Anything helps. God bless." His clothes were worn but clean, his hair slightly long and unkempt, and he held himself with a quietness that seemed different from the aggressive panhandlers she usually encountered in the city. What struck Maya wasn't his appearance, it was the book in his lap. Even from a distance, she could see it was thick, academic-looking. Not what she'd expect someone in his situation to be reading. Maya finished her sandwich and made a decision that surprised her. She walked over to the vending machine, used her last $3 to buy a bottle of water and a granola bar, and approached the man by the fountain. "Hi," she said, feeling awkward. "I thought you might be hungry." He looked up, and Maya was startled by his eyes. They were intelligent, kind, and held a depth that seemed at odds with his circumstances. "That's very thoughtful of you. Thank you." His voice was educated, articulate. Definitely not what she'd expected. "What are you reading?" Maya asked, curiosity overcoming her usual shyness. He held up the book, Principles of Economic Theory by someone she recognized from her economics class. "Just trying to understand how the world works." Maya stared at him. That's one of my textbooks." "Well, it's supposed to be. I couldn't afford to buy it." Something shifted in his expression. "You're a student here?" "Economics major, junior year." "I'm Maya." "David," he said, then seemed to consider something. "Maya, would you like to sit for a moment? I'd be happy to share some insights from this book, if you're interested." Maya glanced around, acutely aware that other students might see her talking to a homeless man. Then she looked back at David's kind eyes and made another decision that surprised her. She sat down. "The chapter on market equilibrium is particularly fascinating," David said, opening the book. "The author argues that true equilibrium is largely theoretical because it assumes perfect information, which never exists in real markets." For the next hour, Maya found herself in the most engaging economics discussion she'd ever had. David didn't just understand the concepts. He could explain them in ways that made complex theories seem logical and connected. He asked questions that made her think deeper, challenged assumptions she hadn't even realized she was making. "How do you know all this?" Maya asked as other students began gathering their things for evening classes. David was quiet for a moment. "I've had time to read. And I've seen how economic theories play out in real life, sometimes in ways the textbooks don't capture." "What do you mean?" "Well, take your situation today. The textbook market is a perfect example of market failure. Students are a captive audience with inelastic demand. You need the book regardless of price. Publishers exploit this by constantly releasing new editions and bundling access codes that can't be resold. The result is artificial scarcity and inflated prices that have nothing to do with the actual value of the information. Maya stared at him. You were listening when I couldn't buy the book. I was here when you came out of the bookstore. You looked like someone who'd just had a door slammed in their face. Maya felt tears starting again, but this time they weren't from embarrassment. They were from the relief of being seen, understood by someone who didn't judge her for her circumstances. I should probably get going, she said, standing up. I have a shift at the campus library in 20 minutes. Maya, David called as she started to walk away. Same time tomorrow? I'll be here if you'd like to continue our discussion. Maya turned back, studying this man who'd somehow made her feel less alone in the world. Why are you being so kind to me? David's smile was genuine, warm. Because kindness shared is kindness multiplied. And because I think you're someone worth being kind to. As Maya walked toward the library, her mind raced with questions. Who was David really? How did a homeless man have such sophisticated knowledge of economic theory? And why did talking to him feel more real, more honest than any conversation she'd had since starting college? What Maya didn't know was that David Chun had been watching students at Westfield University for 3 months, studying their behavior, their values, their authentic selves when they thought no one important was looking. What she didn't know was that David Chun was worth $14 billion and owned, among other things, a significant stake in the publishing company that had produced the textbook she couldn't afford. What she didn't know was that David Chun had been profoundly lonely for most of his adult life, surrounded by people who wanted his money, his influence, his connections, but never him. And what she definitely didn't know was that her simple act of kindness to a stranger had just changed both their lives forever. But she was about to find out that some connections transcend circumstances, and that sometimes the most authentic relationships begin with the biggest lies. The next afternoon, Maya found herself looking forward to seeing David in a way that surprised her. She'd spent her morning shift at the library thinking about their conversation, about how he'd made economic theory feel like poetry instead of mathematics. She brought 2 sandwiches this time, one for herself and one for him. It felt like a small rebellion against the voice in her head that sounded suspiciously like her mother. Asterisk Maya, you can barely feed yourself. Why are you giving food away? Asterisk. But when Maya reached the fountain, David wasn't alone. Maya! He stood up with a smile that made her stomach flutter in a way she wasn't prepared for. I'd like you to meet someone. This is Eleanor. Eleanor, this is Maya, the economics student I was telling you about. Eleanor was probably in her 70s, with silver hair pulled back in an elegant bun and clothes that had seen better days but were meticulously clean. What struck Maya immediately was the woman's posture, straight-backed, dignified, with the bearing of someone accustomed to respect. Maya, dear, David tells me you're studying economic theory. How refreshing to meet a young person interested in understanding how the world actually functions rather than just how they wish it would. Maya shook Eleanor's hand, noting the firmness of her grip and the intelligence in her eyes. Are you also? Maya gestured vaguely, not sure how to politely ask if Eleanor was also homeless. Also temporarily between residences? Yes, dear. Though I prefer to think of it as an extended sabbatical from material concerns. Eleanor's smile was warm, but tinged with something that looked like irony. David gestured for Maya to sit on the bench beside him. Eleanor was just sharing some insights about behavioral economics. She has a fascinating perspective on consumer psychology. Oh, it's nothing so grand, Eleanor said, settling beside them. I simply spent 30 years watching people make financial decisions based on emotion rather than logic, and I learned a few things about human nature. What kind of work did you do? Maya asked. Eleanor and David exchanged a quick glance that Maya almost missed. I was in consulting, Eleanor said carefully, helping organizations understand their market dynamics. For the next hour, Maya found herself in the most intellectually stimulating conversation of her college career. Eleanor could discuss market behavior with surgical precision, while David connected theoretical concepts to real-world applications in ways that made Maya's economics professors seem pedestrian by comparison. Maya, Eleanor said as the afternoon grew later, David mentioned you're struggling with textbook costs. Have you considered alternative approaches to accessing the material? Maya felt her cheeks warm. I've been using the library copies when I can, but there's usually a waiting list. And photocopying is expensive too. What if I told you there were other resources available? Ways to access educational materials that don't require choosing between textbooks and groceries. David shot Eleanor a warning look that Maya definitely caught this time. What kind of resources? Maya asked. Oh, various foundations, scholarship programs for specific subjects. I might be able to put in a word for you if you're interested. Maya's scholarship student instincts kicked in. She'd learned to be wary of offers that seemed too good to be true. That's very kind, but I don't really have connections to that kind of thing. Dear, you'd be surprised how many people are willing to help promising students. Sometimes it's just a matter of knowing where to look. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from her roommate. Asterisk Maya, where are you? Professor Williams wants to see you about your midterm paper. Says it's urgent, asterisk. Maya's stomach dropped. Professor Williams was her academic advisor and scholarship coordinator. Urgent meetings usually meant bad news. I have to go, Maya said, standing quickly. Professor wants to see me. Maya, David called as she started to walk away. Whatever it is, it'll work out. How can you know that? David's smile was gentle, confident. Because you're stronger than whatever challenge you're facing. And because sometimes the universe conspires to help people who help others. Maya wanted to believe him, but as she hurried across campus, she couldn't shake the feeling that her carefully constructed college life was about to fall apart. Professor Williams's office was exactly as intimidating as Maya remembered. Walls lined with academic achievements, a desk that seemed designed to make students feel small, and Williams herself. A woman in her 50s who'd built her career on precision and had little patience for excuses. Sit down, Maya, Professor Williams said without looking up from her computer screen. We have a problem. Maya's heart rate spiked. What kind of problem? Your scholarship requires maintaining a 3.8 GPA and completing all coursework on schedule. According to my records, you haven't purchased the required textbook for Economics 340, and your midterm is in 3 days. Professor, I'm planning to. Maya, let me be direct. Your last 2 quiz scores suggest you're struggling with the material. If you fail this midterm, your GPA will drop below scholarship requirements. Maya felt the world tilting around her. I've been using library copies and studying with classmates. I understand the concepts. Understanding concepts and being able to apply them under exam conditions are different things. Maya, I'm recommending you for emergency financial assistance through the Dean's Fund. It's not a handout, it's a loan that you'll repay after graduation. Maya's pride warred with her desperation. How much of a loan? Enough to cover your textbooks for this semester and next. Maya, swallow your pride. Academic failure isn't noble, it's just failure. Maya stared at her hands, feeling the weight of choices she couldn't afford to make wrong. I need to think about it. You have until tomorrow morning. After that, I'm required to report your at-risk status to the scholarship office. Maya left the meeting feeling like she was drowning in circumstances beyond her control. She walked aimlessly across campus, ending up back at the fountain where David and Eleanor were still sitting, now sharing what looked like takeout from the campus food court. Maya, David said, immediately standing when he saw her expression. What happened? I might lose my scholarship, Maya said, sinking onto the bench beside them. And I'm too proud to accept help, even when I desperately need it. Eleanor moved closer, her voice gentle. Dear, pride is a luxury that people in our situation can't always afford. Our situation? People who've had to rebuild their lives from circumstances beyond their control, Eleanor said carefully. David and I understand something about starting over. Maya looked at David, really looked at him. What happened to you? How did you end up here? David was quiet for a long moment. Sometimes life doesn't go according to plan. Sometimes you have to lose everything to figure out what actually matters. That's not really an answer. Maya, Eleanor interjected. Sometimes the most important thing isn't how someone ended up in difficult circumstances. Sometimes it's how they choose to respond to those circumstances. Maya felt frustrated by their evasiveness, but she was also touched by their concern. I'm supposed to decide by tomorrow morning whether to take emergency loans for textbooks. And what's stopping you? David asked. Because once you start taking loans, it never stops. My mother cleaned houses for 20 years to pay off student loans that were supposed to give her a better life. David's expression shifted to something Maya couldn't quite read. Maya, what if I told you there might be another option? What kind of option? What if someone wanted to purchase textbooks for students who needed them? No strings attached. No loans, no debt, just community support. Maya stared at him. David, you're homeless. How could you possibly? I know people, David said quietly. People who understand that education shouldn't be rationed based on economic circumstances. Eleanor nodded. There are networks, dear. People who've been fortunate and want to pay it forward. Maya felt something cold settling in her stomach. David, who are you really? The question hung in the air between them, and Maya saw something flicker across David's face. Panic, maybe, or guilt. I'm someone who cares about you, David said finally. Does anything else matter? But Maya was beginning to realize that everything else mattered. Because people who knew people, who could casually purchase textbooks for struggling students, weren't usually sitting by fountains with cardboard signs. I need to go, Maya said, standing abruptly. I need to think. Maya, wait. But Maya was already walking away, her mind racing with questions she wasn't sure she wanted answered. Because what if David wasn't who he seemed to be? And what if her growing feelings for him were based on a lie? As Maya headed back to her dorm, she didn't see David pull out a phone that definitely didn't belong to someone living on the streets. She didn't hear him make a call to someone called Peterson about accelerating the timeline. And she didn't know that David Chen was about to make a decision that would change both their lives, and test whether their connection was strong enough to survive the truth. But Maya's instincts were telling her that something was wrong, and she'd learned to trust those instincts. Because sometimes the people who seem too good to be true are exactly that. And sometimes falling in love means falling into a deception that's more complex than anything you could imagine. Maya couldn't sleep. She lay in her narrow dorm bed, staring at the ceiling while her roommate snored softly, her mind cycling through everything she knew about David. The educated vocabulary, the sophisticated understanding of economics, the mysterious people who could solve her textbook problem. At 2 a.m., she gave up on sleep and pulled out her laptop. Maya had learned to be resourceful during her 3 years on scholarship. When professors mentioned books she couldn't afford, she'd gotten creative about finding information. Academic databases, newspaper archives, social media searches. She'd developed a talent for digital investigation born from necessity. She started with the obvious search: David and homeless and Westfield University. Nothing useful. Then she tried David and economics and consulting. Still nothing that seemed relevant. But Maya remembered something Eleanor had said about being between residences rather than homeless, and the way both David and Eleanor had spoken about consulting work. She tried searching recent news articles about consulting firms, economic advisors, people who'd left high-profile positions. What she found made her blood run cold. A 6-month-old article in the business section of the city newspaper. Billionaire CEO takes sabbatical following mental health concerns. The accompanying photo showed a man in an expensive suit, clean-shaven and perfectly groomed, but the eyes were unmistakably familiar. David Chen, CEO and primary shareholder of Chen Industries, a conglomerate worth an estimated $14 billion. Maya stared at the screen, her hands shaking. The article mentioned that Chen had stepped away from his company following what his representatives called exhaustion and a need to reassess priorities. There had been speculation about a nervous breakdown, about the pressures of inherited wealth, about his increasing isolation from friends and family. Maya read further. David Chen was 32 years old, had inherited the company when his parents died in a car accident 5 years earlier, and had no siblings or close family. The article mentioned his reputation for being brilliant but reclusive, and described him as one of the most eligible and elusive bachelors in the country. The most recent information was from 4 months ago, when Chen Industries had announced that their CEO was taking an extended leave of absence for personal reasons, and that the company would be managed by the board of directors. Maya's phone buzzed with a text message that made her jump. Asterisk can't sleep either? David asterisk. Maya stared at the message, her mind reeling. How did he have her number? She'd never given it to him. Another text. Asterisk I know you have questions. Meet me at the fountain at sunrise? I'll explain everything. Asterisk. Maya's hands were trembling as she typed back. How do you have my phone number? Asterisk, that's one of many things I need to explain. Maya, I know you figured out who I am. Asterisk. Maya felt like she was drowning. You lied to me. Asterisk, I omitted truth. There's a difference. Please give me a chance to explain. Asterisk. Maya stared at her phone, torn between fury and heartbreak. Everything she'd felt for David, the connection, the growing affection, the sense that she'd found someone who understood her, all of it was built on a foundation of lies. But even as anger flooded through her, Maya couldn't shake the memory of how David had looked at her, how he'd listened to her thoughts about economics with genuine interest, how he'd made her feel seen and valued. Asterisk sunrise. You get 10 minutes, asterisk. Thank you. Maya closed her laptop and tried to process what she'd learned. The man she'd been bringing sandwiches to, the man she'd been falling for, was worth more money than she could comprehend. But as dawn approached, Maya realized she had a bigger problem than David's deception. Because if David Chun was worth $14 billion, what did he want with a poor college student who couldn't afford textbooks? Maya arrived at the fountain as the sun was painting the campus in soft gold light. David was already there, looking exactly as he had for the past week. Worn clothes, slightly unkempt hair, cardboard sign nowhere to be seen. But now Maya could see past the costume to the man underneath. You read the articles, David said without preamble. Articles plural. I was thorough. Maya remained standing, keeping distance between them. David Chun. Billionaire. CEO. Currently on what the business press is calling a mental health sabbatical. David flinched at the clinical description. That's the public version. What's the private version? David was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. The private version is that I realized I was surrounded by people who loved my money more than they loved me, and I had no idea who I actually was underneath all of that. So you decided to play dress up and lie to college students? I decided to find out what it felt like to be valued for something other than my net worth. Maya felt her anger warring with curiosity. And how's that working out for you? Until yesterday, it was the most honest I'd felt in my entire adult life. Maya sat down on the bench, not because she was forgiving him, but because her legs were shaking. David, I brought you sandwiches. I felt sorry for you. I shared my feelings about being poor with someone who could buy this entire university without thinking about it. Maya, everything you shared with me was real. Everything I felt when you shared it was real. But your circumstances weren't real. Your vulnerability wasn't real. My vulnerability was the realest thing about me. David's voice cracked slightly. Maya, do you know what it's like to inherit billions of dollars when you're 27 and have no idea if anyone in your life actually cares about you as a person? No, David, I don't know what that's like. I know what it's like to choose between textbooks and groceries. I know what it's like to pretend you're not hungry, so your friends don't feel awkward about going to restaurants you can't afford. Maya stood up again, pacing. But I don't know what it's like to lie to people about fundamental facts about my life. Maya, if I'd told you I was David Chun on that first day, would you have sat down and talked economics with me? Maya started to answer, then stopped. Because the honest answer was no. She would have assumed he was mocking her, or experimenting with her, or amusing himself with the poor scholarship student. That's not the point, Maya said finally. Isn't it? Maya, you fell for my mind, my perspective, my values. You fell for me. The money doesn't change who I am inside. The money changes everything, David. It changes the power dynamic between us. It changes what your interest in me might mean. It changes. Maya's phone rang, interrupting her building anger. Professor Williams's name appeared on the screen. I have to take this, Maya said, answering the call. Maya, where are you? You need to come to my office immediately. Professor, it's barely 7 a.m. Maya, there's been a development in your scholarship situation. Someone has contacted the university about you specifically. I need to see you now. Maya felt cold dread settling in her stomach. What kind of development? Just get here. And Maya, bring any documentation you have about outside contact regarding your academic situation. Maya hung up and stared at David, who was watching her with an expression that looked like guilt. David, what did you do? Maya, I can explain. What did you do? David ran his hands through his hair. I may have made some inquiries about your scholarship status. Through intermediaries. I wanted to help. You contacted my university? About me? Without asking me. Maya, you were going to lose your scholarship over textbook costs. I have resources that could solve that problem easily. You went behind my back to people who control my academic future, and did what, exactly? I arranged for a donation to the university's emergency student fund. Anonymous, untraceable, enough to cover textbook costs for students in your situation. Maya stared at him, feeling like the ground was shifting beneath her feet. You donated money to my university. To help students like you. Not specifically you, but students facing similar challenges. David, do you understand what you've done? I helped. You made me a charity case to people who determine whether I get to stay in school. You made decisions about my life without asking me. Maya's voice was rising with each word. You took away my agency while pretending to help me. David's face went pale. Maya, that wasn't my intention. Your intentions don't matter. Your impact matters. And the impact is that I now have to go explain to my academic advisor why a billionaire is taking an interest in my financial situation. Maya started walking toward the academic buildings, then turned back. David, I need you to understand something. I don't care how lonely you are or how genuine your feelings might be. You don't get to play with my life to make yourself feel better about yours. Maya, please, stay away from me. And if you've contacted anyone else about my situation, fix it. Immediately. As Maya walked away, she felt something breaking inside her chest. Not just anger at David's deception, but heartbreak over the loss of something that had felt real and precious. But as she reached the academic building, Maya realized that her problems were just beginning. Because Professor Williams was waiting with questions about Maya's connection to David Chin. And David Chin wasn't the kind of person who could be involved in someone's life quietly. Which meant Maya's carefully constructed anonymous college existence was about to become very public, very complicated, and very dangerous to everything she'd worked to build. Because sometimes when billionaires try to help, they destroy the very thing they're trying to save. And sometimes the cost of someone else's generosity is your own independence. Professor Williams's office felt like an interrogation room as Maya sat across from the desk, watching her advisor flip through a thick file that hadn't existed the day before. Maya, I'm going to ask you some direct questions, and I need completely honest answers. Okay, how long have you known David Chun? Maya's stomach dropped. About a week. And how would you characterize your relationship with him? I thought he was homeless. I was trying to be kind to someone who seemed to need help. Professor Williams looked up from the file, her expression unreadable. Maya, at 7:30 this morning, I received a call from the University Development Office. Apparently, Chin Industries made a donation to the university last night. $2 million, designated specifically for emergency student financial assistance. Maya felt the room spinning around her. $2 million? The donation came with a request that the funds be administered through my office, for students facing textbook and basic necessity costs. Maya, there are currently 47 students who qualify for this assistance. So it's not just about me. Maya, the donation was made 12 hours after you met with me about your scholarship concerns. The timing is notable. Maya slumped in her chair. Professor Williams, I didn't ask for this. I didn't even know David was wealthy until last night. But you do know him personally. I thought I did. Professor Williams closed the file and leaned forward. Maya, I'm going to be frank with you. In 30 years of academic administration, I've never had a billionaire take a personal interest in one of my students. This level of intervention suggests either a very generous philanthropist or a very problematic personal relationship. What do you mean problematic? I mean that wealthy older men who suddenly develop interest in helping young women sometimes have motivations that extend beyond charitable giving. Maya felt sick. Professor, it's not like that. David we never. Maya, what exactly has been the nature of your relationship with Mr. Chun? Maya thought about their conversations by the fountain, the way David had listened to her thoughts about economics, the intellectual connection that had felt so genuine. We talked about school, about economic theory. He seemed to understand things about being outside the system. Outside the system? Being poor, being overlooked, having to work harder than everyone else just to stay in place. Professor Williams was quiet for a long moment. Maya, David Chin inherited billions of dollars. He's never been poor or overlooked in his entire life. But he seemed to understand. Maya, wealthy people are often very skilled at making others feel understood when it serves their purposes. The words hit Maya like a slap. Are you saying David was manipulating me? I'm saying that a $2 million donation in response to one student's financial crisis suggests motivations that go beyond casual friendship. Maya's phone buzzed with a text. She glanced at it automatically and felt her world shift again. The message was from an unknown number. Maya Rodriguez, this is Jennifer Walsh from Channel 7 News. We understand you're connected to David Chen's recent university donation. Would you be available for an interview about your relationship with Mr. Chen? Maya stared at the phone in horror. Professor, how would reporters know about this? Professor Williams frowned. What reporters? Maya showed her the text. Professor Williams's expression darkened. Maya, university donations of this size are public record. If reporters are connecting you to the donation, someone gave them your name. Someone like who? Someone with access to both university records and David Chen's personal information. Maya felt panic rising in her chest. Professor, I don't want to be in the news. I don't want attention. I just want to finish my degree and disappear back into normal life. Maya, that may not be possible anymore. Before Maya could respond, her phone rang. David's number. Don't answer it, Professor Williams said quickly. Why not? Because until we understand the full scope of this situation, any communication between you and Mr. Chun could be misinterpreted. Maya, you need to understand something. If this becomes a media story, your scholarship could be affected. How? Because scholarship recipients are expected to maintain certain standards of conduct. If the press portrays your relationship with Mr. Chun as inappropriate, the scholarship committee will have to review your status. Maya felt like she was drowning. Professor, I didn't do anything inappropriate. I gave a sandwich to someone I thought was hungry. Maya, I believe you. But perception matters in academic environments. And right now, the perception is that a billionaire has taken a very personal interest in your financial welfare. Maya's phone buzzed with another text, this one from David. Asterisk Maya, we need to talk. The donation has attracted attention neither of us wanted. I need to explain some things I should have told you from the beginning. Asterisk. Professor Williams read the message over Maya's shoulder. Maya, what does he mean by things he should have told you from the beginning? I don't know. Maya, I'm going to give you some advice, and I need you to listen carefully. Until this situation resolves, you should avoid contact with Mr. Chun. Don't meet with him, don't respond to his messages, don't discuss him with reporters. But what if he's trying to help clarify the situation? Maya, billionaires don't make $2 million donations to clarify situations. They make $2 million donations to control situations. As Maya left Professor Williams's office, her mind was reeling with the complexity of what David's seemingly generous gesture had created. She'd gone from being an anonymous scholarship student to being the subject of media interest, university scrutiny, and academic review. All because she'd shared a sandwich with someone she'd thought was homeless. Walking across campus, Maya became acutely aware that people were looking at her differently. Whispers followed her past the student center, and she caught fragments of conversation. That's her, the girl, billionaire, donation. Maya's phone rang again. This time it was her roommate. Maya, where are you? There are reporters outside our dorm asking about you, and some billionaire. What the hell is going on? Maya felt the last vestiges of her private life crumbling around her. I'll explain later. Are they still there? Yeah, and campus security is trying to get them to leave, but they're saying they're on public property. Don't talk to them. Don't tell them anything about me. Maya, what should I tell them if they ask if I know you? Maya realized she had no idea how to answer that question. Because at this point, she wasn't sure she knew herself anymore. Tell them no comment and close the door. Maya hung up and found herself walking toward the one place on campus that had felt safe and private, the fountain where she'd first met David. He was there waiting for her. Maya, thank God. I've been trying to reach you. David, Professor Williams told me not to talk to you. Because of the media attention. Because of everything. David, your donation has made my life a nightmare. David stood up, moving toward her with obvious concern. Maya, I'm so sorry. I never intended for this to become public. But it is public. There are reporters outside my dorm. My scholarship is under review. My academic advisor thinks you're either a philanthropist or a predator. David flinched. Maya, I need you to know something. The donation wasn't just about helping you. What do you mean? I mean there's something about my situation that I haven't told you. Something that explains why I've been living like this. Why I couldn't just write you a check for textbooks. Maya studied his face, seeing something that looked like fear. What kind of something? Maya, I'm not just taking a sabbatical from my company. I'm hiding from people who want to control my decisions about how I use my wealth. What people? My board of directors. My father's former business partners. People who've been managing my life since my parents died and who don't want me making independent decisions about charitable giving. Maya felt a chill of understanding. You mean they don't want you giving money away? I mean they've spent 5 years convincing me that I'm too emotionally unstable to manage my own fortune. The sabbatical isn't voluntary, Maya. It's a legal requirement while they evaluate my mental competency. Maya stared at him. David, are you saying you're not legally in control of your own money? I'm saying that large charitable donations without board approval could be used as evidence that I'm mentally unfit to manage Chin Industries. And you made a $2 million donation anyway. Because I wanted to help you, and I thought I could do it quietly. Maya felt the full scope of what David had risked beginning to sink in. David, what happens now? Now my board knows I made an unauthorized donation. They're probably already preparing paperwork to have me declared incompetent. And what happens to me? David's expression was anguished. I don't know. But Maya, I need you to understand something. Everything I felt for you, everything real that happened between us, none of that was fake. But everything else was. Maya, I fell in love with you. The words hung between them like a confession that changed everything and nothing simultaneously. David, you don't even know me. You know a version of me that exists in conversations by a fountain. You don't know what I'm like when I'm stressed or angry or scared. You don't know. I know you're kind enough to feed strangers. I know you're brilliant enough to understand economic theory that confuses graduate students. I know you're strong enough to work 3 jobs while maintaining a scholarship. I know you're brave enough to challenge ideas even when you're not sure you're right. Maya felt tears starting. And I know you're wealthy enough to solve problems with money and reckless enough to risk your own future to help someone you barely know. Maya, is that such a terrible thing to know about someone? Before Maya could answer, her phone buzzed with a call from Professor Williams. Maya, you need to come back to my office immediately. We have a problem. What kind of problem? The university president wants to meet with you. And Maya, Chin Industries Board of Directors, has contacted the university about their donation. They're claiming it was made without proper authorization. Maya felt the ground shifting beneath her feet again. What does that mean? It means the donation might be revoked. And it means you're about to become the center of a legal battle between a billionaire and the people who control his fortune. As Maya hung up, she realized that David's attempt to help her had trapped them both in a situation that could destroy his future and hers. But looking at his face, seeing the genuine anguish there, Maya also realized something else. She was falling in love with him too. Which meant that whatever happened next, it was going to hurt more than she'd ever imagined possible. Maya sat in the university president's conference room, surrounded by people in expensive suits who spoke about her as if she weren't there. President Morrison, 2 university lawyers, someone from the development office, and Professor Williams, who kept shooting Maya apologetic looks. Miss Rodriguez, President Morrison finally addressed her directly. We need to understand the exact nature of your relationship with David Chin. I've already explained this to Professor Williams. I thought he was homeless. I offered him food. We talked about economics. Miss Rodriguez, according to Chin Industries Board of Directors, Mr. Chin has been under medical supervision for emotional instability. They're suggesting that his donation to this university was made during what they're calling a manic episode triggered by romantic obsession. Maya felt the words hit her like physical blows. Romantic obsession? One of the university lawyers leaned forward. Miss Rodriguez, the board is claiming that Mr. Chen's interest in you represents a pattern of impulsive behavior that calls into question his mental competency. That's not true. David never acted inappropriately toward me. Nevertheless, the board is threatening to revoke the donation and pursue legal action against the university for accepting funds from someone they claim lacks the mental capacity to authorize such gifts. Maya felt trapped in a nightmare. What does that mean for the other students who need the money? It means 47 students lose access to emergency financial assistance, President Morrison said grimly. Including you. And it means, added the second lawyer, that depending on how this plays out, your scholarship could be affected. The board is suggesting that your involvement with Mr. Chin demonstrates poor judgment that reflects badly on the university's selection criteria. Maya stood up abruptly. This is insane. I didn't do anything wrong. I was kind to someone I thought needed help. Miss Rodriguez, Professor Williams said gently, we believe you. But we need to protect both you and the university from what could become a very messy legal situation. How? By temporarily suspending your scholarship pending investigation. Maya felt the room spinning around her. You're suspending my scholarship? Temporarily. Until we can resolve the questions around the donation and your relationship with Mr. Chin. But without my scholarship, I can't afford to stay in school. We understand the difficulty of the situation. Maya was already moving toward the door. I need to leave. Miss Rodriguez, we're not finished. Yes, we are. Maya fled the conference room and ran across campus, her vision blurred with tears of rage and panic. Everything she'd worked for, everything she'd sacrificed to achieve, was crumbling because she'd been kind to a stranger. She found Eleanor sitting on their usual bench by the fountain, feeding breadcrumbs to pigeons with the patient concentration of someone who had nowhere else to be. "Eleanor, thank God you're here." Eleanor looked up with concern. "Maya, dear, you look upset. What's happened?" Maya sank onto the bench beside Eleanor, feeling like the older woman was the only person left who might understand her situation. "Everything's falling apart. The university is suspending my scholarship because of David's donation. His board of directors is saying he's mentally incompetent. Reporters are calling me. I don't know what to do." Eleanor put a comforting arm around Maya's shoulders. "Dear, I'm so sorry this has become complicated for you. Eleanor, you said you understood about starting over, about losing everything. How do you survive when the whole world seems to be against you?" Eleanor was quiet for a moment, her expression thoughtful. "Maya, sometimes the most difficult thing about starting over is learning who you can trust." "What do you mean?" "I mean that sometimes the people who seem most sympathetic to your situation are the ones who understand it best, because they've orchestrated it." Maya felt a chill of warning. "Eleanor, what are you saying?" Eleanor's demeanor shifted subtly, her posture straightening, her voice becoming more controlled, authoritative. "I'm saying that your situation with David Chen wasn't as accidental as you've been led to believe." "What?" Eleanor reached into her bag and pulled out a tablet, opening it to show Maya a series of photographs. Maya stared at the screen in shock. They were surveillance photos of her, walking to class, working at the library, eating lunch alone under the oak tree. Photos that had clearly been taken over several weeks. "Eleanor, what is this?" "Maya, my name isn't Eleanor. I'm Dr. Patricia Lawson, and I'm a psychiatric consultant retained by Chen Industries to evaluate David Chen's mental health and decision-making capacity." Maya felt like she was falling through space. "You're his doctor?" "I'm one of several professionals monitoring his behavior during his sabbatical." "Maya, David's presence at this university wasn't random. We identified you as a potential test case." "Test case for what?" "For David's judgment about people and money." "Maya, we needed to understand whether David's charitable impulses were motivated by genuine altruism or by emotional instability." Maya stared at the surveillance photos, understanding dawning with horrible clarity. "You've been watching me. We've been watching both of you. Maya, David doesn't know that his board arranged for him to encounter you. He doesn't know that your financial crisis was identified as a perfect scenario to test his response to someone in need. You manipulated the situation. We created conditions that would reveal David's true motivations and decision-making processes. Maya, if David had simply written you a check for textbooks, that would have been one thing. But a $2 million donation to an entire university suggests a level of emotional investment that goes beyond rational charitable giving." Maya felt sick. "You used me to prove that David is mentally unstable. We used a controlled scenario to evaluate whether David Chen can make responsible decisions about his fortune. Maya, David's parents left him $14 billion. If he's not competent to manage that wealth responsibly, it's our duty to protect both him and the thousands of people whose livelihoods depend on Chen Industries." Maya stood up, backing away from Eleanor, Dr. Lawson, whoever she really was. "David was right to hide from you people. Maya, David has been hospitalized twice for depression and anxiety since his parents died. He's attempted suicide. He's isolated himself from every relationship in his life. The board isn't trying to steal his money. They're trying to keep him alive. By lying to him about who you are? By monitoring his behavior in natural settings where his responses would be genuine rather than performed for medical professionals." Maya felt everything she'd experienced over the past week recontextualizing itself. How much of what happened between David and me was real? David's feelings for you are genuine. His desire to help you is genuine. But Maya, his response to your situation, the immediate, overwhelming financial intervention, demonstrates exactly the kind of impulsive decision-making that concerns the board. Because he cares about people? Because he's willing to risk his entire financial future for someone he met a week ago? Maya, that's not rational altruism. That's emotional instability. Maya's phone buzzed. David's number. She answered it without thinking. "Maya, where are you?" "I've been looking everywhere." "I'm at the fountain with your psychiatric consultant." Silence. "Maya, what are you talking about?" "Eleanor. Except her name is Dr. Patricia Lawson, and she's been evaluating your mental health, by watching us interact. Maya heard David's sharp intake of breath. Maya, listen to me very carefully. Get away from her. Right now. David. Maya, Dr. Lawson was fired from my case 6 months ago for recommending that I be involuntarily committed. She's not working for my board anymore. She's working for someone else. Maya looked at Eleanor, Dr. Lawson, whose expression had shifted to something cold and calculating. Maya, hang up the phone. Why should I? Because Dr. Lawson has been hired by people who want to prove that I'm incompetent so they can gain control of Chin Industries. And because you've just become evidence in a case that could destroy both our lives. Maya felt the ground disappearing beneath her feet entirely. Dr. Lawson, is that true? Maya, David Chun is worth $14 billion. Do you really think no one else wants control of that fortune? Who hired you? People who understand that David's emotional instability makes him a danger to himself and to the economic interests of thousands of employees and shareholders. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from David. Run. Now. Dr. Lawson is dangerous. Maya looked at the woman she'd thought was a friend, a fellow outsider, someone who understood what it meant to lose everything. Instead, she'd been talking to someone who'd been manipulating her from the beginning. Maya, Dr. Lawson said, her voice taking on a therapeutic tone. You need to understand that your feelings for David have been cultivated deliberately. Everything you think you know about him has been designed to make you emotionally invested in his situation. By who? By David himself. Maya, David Chun is a master manipulator who's convinced you that he's vulnerable when he's actually one of the most powerful people in the world. Maya felt like she was drowning in competing versions of reality. I don't know what to believe anymore. Believe this, Dr. Lawson said, standing up and moving closer. David Chen's interest in you isn't romantic. It's strategic. And you've been helping him prove his competency by demonstrating that he can inspire loyalty and affection from people who have nothing to gain from knowing him. Maya's phone rang again. David. Maya, don't listen to her. I'm coming to get you. David, I don't know what's real anymore. I know. But Maya, you have to trust me one more time. Dr. Lawson isn't trying to help you understand the truth. She's trying to make you doubt everything you've felt. How do I know you're not doing the same thing? Because I'm about to do something that will prove I'm willing to lose everything for you. The line went dead. Maya stared at her phone, then at Dr. Lawson, who was watching her with the focused attention of someone evaluating a psychological subject. Maya, David Chin is coming here to convince you that his feelings are genuine. But I need you to ask yourself, what does a billionaire want with a poor college student that he can't get from someone in his own social class? Maya felt the question settling in her chest like a weight, because she didn't know the answer. And she was beginning to realize that she didn't know anything at all. David arrived at the fountain 15 minutes later, but he wasn't the same man Maya had been talking to all week. This David moved with purpose, spoke with authority, and carried himself like someone accustomed to being obeyed. The transformation was so complete that Maya wondered if anything about him had ever been real. Dr. Lawson, David said, his voice carrying a cold edge Maya had never heard before. I thought the restraining order was clear about maintaining distance from me. The restraining order applies to direct contact with you, not to consulting about your mental health with people you've chosen to involve in your situation. Maya stared between them. There's a restraining order? Maya, David said, not taking his eyes off Dr. Lawson. 6 months ago, Dr. Lawson recommended that I be involuntarily committed based on her assessment that I was a danger to myself and others. When I refused treatment, she began stalking me. That's an interesting interpretation, Dr. Lawson replied calmly. I prefer to think of it as continued monitoring of a patient who poses a significant risk to public safety. Public safety? Maya's voice was rising with each revelation. David, what is she talking about? David finally looked at Maya, and she saw something in his eyes that looked like genuine pain. Maya, I should have told you this from the beginning. I didn't just inherit money when my parents died. I inherited a company that manufactures defense technology, weapons systems, military contracts. Maya felt the air leave her lungs. You make weapons? Chin Industries has multiple divisions. The defense contracts represent about 30% of our revenue. Revenue from weapons that kill people. Revenue from technology that protects American soldiers and allies. Dr. Lawson smiled coldly. Maya, David Chin doesn't just inherit a fortune. He inherits responsibility for technology that can level cities. and he's demonstrated repeatedly that he makes decisions based on emotion rather than logic. Maya looked between them, feeling like she was watching a tennis match where the ball was her understanding of reality. David, is that why the board is questioning your competency? Because you control weapons technology. The board is questioning my competency because I've been donating millions of dollars to peace organizations and refugee aid groups. Organizations that work to help people displaced by conflicts involving technology that my company produces. Maya stared at him. You've been trying to undo the damage your company causes. I've been trying to find ways to use my inheritance responsibly. But apparently, that makes me mentally unstable. Dr. Lawson pulled out her tablet again, showing Maya financial records. Maya, in the past 5 years, David has donated over $2 billion to organizations that actively work against the interests of his own company. He's destabilizing the defense industry out of guilt over his parents' business decisions. Maybe because he has a conscience, Maya shot back. Or maybe because he's suffering from a savior complex that makes him believe he can single-handedly solve global conflicts through charitable giving, Dr. Lawson countered. Maya, David's donations don't save lives. They destabilize carefully maintained geopolitical balances. David stepped closer to Maya. Maya, I need you to understand something. Everything Dr. Lawson has told you about my mental health is designed to make you doubt your own judgment about me. And everything David has told you about his motivations is designed to make you believe he's a victim rather than someone with more power than most governments, Dr. Lawson added. Maya felt like she was drowning in competing narratives, each one making sense until she heard the next one. Stop. Both of you, just stop. Maya, David began. No. David, I need you to answer one question honestly. What? When you first approached me, when you sat by this fountain pretending to be homeless, did you already know who I was? David was quiet for a long moment. Yes. Maya felt something die inside her chest. You researched me. Maya, it wasn't like that. You knew I was poor. You knew I was struggling with scholarship requirements. You knew exactly which buttons to push to make me feel connected to you. Maya, I knew basic information about students at this university. But I didn't know you. I didn't know how kind you were, how intelligent, how brave. You don't get to tell me about my own qualities when you've been lying to me from the moment we met. Dr. Lawson was watching the exchange with obvious satisfaction. Maya, David Chen has been manipulating you from the beginning. The homeless persona, the intellectual conversations, the apparent vulnerability, all of it designed to make you emotionally invested in his situation. Maya turned on Dr. Lawson. And what have you been doing? You've been pretending to be homeless too. You've been lying about who you are, manipulating me to gather information about David. I've been doing my job as a mental health professional. Your job is to spy on people and destroy their relationships? My job is to prevent someone with access to weapons of mass destruction from making decisions that could affect global security. Maya felt the scope of what she'd become involved in hitting her like a physical blow. This isn't about romance or money or even mental health. This is about control of a weapons manufacturing company. Finally, you're beginning to understand, Dr. Lawson said. Maya, David said urgently, whatever you're thinking, I need you to know that my feelings for you are real. Everything else might be complicated, but that's real. Maya looked at him, really looked at him, and saw someone who was either genuinely in love with her or so skilled at manipulation that she couldn't tell the difference. David, how do I know what's real when everything you've told me has been carefully constructed to make me trust you? Because I'm about to do something that will cost me everything if I'm wrong about you. David pulled out his phone and made a call. Peterson, it's David. I want you to transfer voting control of my shares to Maya Rodriguez, effective immediately. Maya stared at him in shock. David, what are you doing? I'm proving that I trust you with the most important decision I'll ever make. Dr. Lawson moved quickly, grabbing Maya's arm. Maya, don't let him do this. He's having a psychotic break. He's trying to transfer control of billions of dollars in defense contracts to someone he met a week ago. Maya, David said, still on the phone. I'm giving you voting control over Chin Industries. If you believe I'm manipulating you, if you think I'm mentally unstable, you can vote with the board to have me removed from the company permanently. David, I can't. If you believe that my feelings for you are genuine, if you think I'm competent to make my own decisions about my life and my money, you can support my right to run the company according to my own values. Maya felt the weight of impossible choice settling on her shoulders. David, You're asking me to decide whether you're sane or not. I'm asking you to decide whether you trust your own judgment about people. Dr. Lawson was pulling on Maya's arm. Maya, this is exactly the kind of impulsive, grandiose gesture that demonstrates why David needs professional intervention. Healthy people don't transfer billions of dollars to virtual strangers. And manipulative people don't give away the source of their power, David countered. Maya pulled free from Dr. Lawson's grip and stared at both of them. You're both asking me to choose sides in a situation I don't understand, with stakes I can't comprehend, based on information I can't verify. Maya, you have to choose, David said quietly. Because if you don't, other people will make the choice for you. What do you mean? Dr. Lawson answered. I mean that David's board has already filed petitions to have him declared mentally incompetent. The only thing stopping them is the question of whether his recent behavior demonstrates mental illness or criminal manipulation. And which am I evidence of? Maya asked. That depends on what you decide about David's competency. Maya felt trapped in a nightmare where every choice led to disaster. If she supported David's competency, she became complicit in whatever decisions he made about weapons technology. If she supported the board's petition, she became complicit in destroying someone who might genuinely love her. Maya, David said, I need you to know something else. If the board gets control of Chin Industries, they're not going to continue my charitable giving. They're going to expand the weapons division and pursue military contracts that I've been refusing. And if you maintain control, I'm going to convert the entire company to peaceful technology within 5 years. Clean energy, medical devices, educational technology. Dr. Lawson laughed bitterly. Maya, David's conversion plan would eliminate 70,000 jobs and destabilize defense contractors throughout the country. His idealism isn't just impractical, it's economically devastating. Maya felt like she was being asked to decide the fate of thousands of people based on her assessment of one man's character. A man she'd known for a week, who'd been lying to her from the moment they met. I can't do this, Maya said, backing away from both of them. I can't be responsible for this kind of decision. Maya, you're already responsible, David said. Your testimony about my mental state will be used in court proceedings regardless of what you decide. Then I won't testify. Maya, you don't have a choice. You're going to be subpoenaed by both sides. Maya felt the last of her options disappearing. So no matter what I do, I destroy someone's life. Maya, Dr. Lawson said gently, you can save lives by helping ensure that weapons technology stays under responsible corporate oversight rather than the control of someone whose judgment has been compromised by romantic obsession. And Maya, David said, you can save lives by supporting the conversion of a weapons company into technology that actually helps people. Maya looked between them, understanding finally that she wasn't choosing between a billionaire and his doctor. She was choosing between two versions of catastrophe. And the person who would pay the price for her choice wasn't David or Dr. Lawson, or even herself. It was every person whose life would be affected by whoever controlled Chin Industries and its weapons technology. People she would never meet, in conflicts she would never understand, in places she would never see. I need time to think, Maya said. Maya, the hearing is tomorrow morning, Dr. Lawson said. You don't have time. Then I guess everyone is going to be disappointed. Maya walked away from both of them, leaving behind the fountain where she'd thought she'd found something real, and headed toward a future that felt more uncertain than ever. Because sometimes the cost of other people's love is your own soul. And sometimes the weight of other people's choices becomes your responsibility, whether you want it or not. Maya spent the night in the university library, surrounded by legal documents, corporate filings, and news articles about Chin Industries that she'd printed from the database. If she was going to make a decision that could affect thousands of lives, she was going to make it with as much information as possible. What she discovered made her sick. Chin Industries didn't just manufacture weapons. They manufactured some of the most sophisticated killing technology in the world. Drone systems, missile guidance software, surveillance equipment used in conflicts across 3 continents. The company's defense contracts included sales to countries with documented human rights violations. But David's recent donations told a different story. $2 billion to refugee aid organizations, medical groups operating in war zones, and peace advocacy groups. Money that had literally saved lives in the same regions where Chin Industries technology was taking them. Maya was so absorbed in her research that she didn't notice Professor Williams approaching until she sat down across from her. Maya, what are you doing here at 3 in the morning? Maya looked up, realizing she'd been reading for 6 hours straight. Trying to figure out how to testify about someone's mental health when I don't understand the full scope of what I'm testifying about. Professor Williams glanced at the papers spread across the table. This is about David Chun. This is about a $14 billion weapons manufacturing company and whether the person who controls it is mentally competent to make decisions about global security. Professor Williams was quiet for a moment. Maya, that's not your responsibility. Apparently it is. I'm being subpoenaed to testify about David's mental state based on my interactions with him. And what will you testify? Maya leaned back in her chair, exhausted. I don't know. Professor, how do you evaluate someone's mental health when you've only known them under completely artificial circumstances? What do you mean? I mean that everything I know about David happened while he was pretending to be someone else. How do I know if his behavior was genuine or performed? Professor Williams studied Maya's face carefully. Maya, can I tell you something in confidence? Of course. I've been at this university for 30 years. In that time, I've seen a lot of wealthy people make donations for a lot of different reasons. Ego, tax benefits, social status, guilt. There's usually an angle. And David Chen's donation was different. It wasn't announced publicly. It didn't come with naming rights or recognition requirements. It was structured specifically to help students without anyone knowing where the money came from. Maya frowned. But everyone found out anyway. Only because reporters started investigating after the amount was disclosed in public filings. Maya, David tried very hard to make sure you would never know the money came from him. Maya felt something shifting in her understanding. You think he was trying to help without taking credit? I think someone who wanted recognition for his generosity would have structured the donation very differently. Maya stared at the papers in front of her, thinking about David's face when he'd talked about trying to use his inheritance responsibly. Professor, what if David really is trying to do the right thing with his company? Then the question becomes whether the right thing is converting a weapons manufacturer to peaceful technology or ensuring that weapons technology stays under stable corporate management. How do I decide that? Professor Williams reached across the table and gathered some of the financial documents. Maya, you don't have to decide global security policy. You just have to testify honestly about your observations of David's behavior and mental state. But my testimony will influence the decision about his competency. Your testimony will be one piece of evidence among many. Maya, you're not responsible for the outcome. You're only responsible for telling the truth about what you observed. Maya felt something loosening in her chest. What if the truth is complicated? Then you testify about the complications. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Asterisk Maya, this is Richard Chun, David's cousin. I need to speak with you urgently about the family situation. Can you meet me at the campus coffee shop at 6 a.m.? Asterisk. Maya showed the message to Professor Williams. Did you know David had family? I thought he was alone in the world. Maya felt another piece of the puzzle shifting. Professor, if David has family, why haven't they been involved in this situation? That's a very good question. At 6 a.m., Maya sat in the nearly empty coffee shop, waiting for someone she'd never heard of until 12 hours ago. When Richard Chun walked in, she recognized the family resemblance immediately. The same intelligent eyes, the same careful way of moving, but without David's recent uncertainty. Maya, thank you for meeting me. I know this situation must be overwhelming. Richard, I didn't know David had family. David doesn't know I'm here. Maya, I need to tell you some things about my cousin that might change your perspective on this entire situation. Richard sat down across from her, and Maya noticed he moved with the controlled precision of someone accustomed to being listened to. Maya, David wasn't lying when he told you he'd been hospitalized for depression. But what he didn't tell you is that those hospitalizations were voluntary. David committed himself for treatment because he was struggling with the moral weight of inheriting a weapons manufacturing company. Dr. Lawson made it sound like he was dangerously unstable. Dr. Lawson was hired by David's board of directors specifically because she has a history of finding wealthy patients incompetent to manage their own affairs. Maya stared at him. You mean she's done this before? Maya, there's an entire industry of psychiatric professionals who specialize in providing the medical justification for wealthy families to gain control of inconvenient heirs. Maya felt cold understanding settling in her stomach. Are you saying David's board hired Dr. Lawson to find him incompetent regardless of his actual mental health? I'm saying that Dr. Lawson has declared 7 different wealthy individuals mentally incompetent in the past 10 years, always in favor of family members or boards who wanted control of their assets. Maya thought about Dr. Lawson's surveillance photos, her careful questions, her seeming sympathy. She was gathering evidence to use against David. And she was using you to do it. Maya, everything Dr. Lawson told you about David's impulsive behavior and emotional instability was designed to make you doubt your own judgment about him. But Richard, David did make impulsive decisions. The donation, transferring his voting shares to me. Maya, David transferred his voting shares to you because it's the only way to prevent his board from declaring him incompetent and seizing control of the company. Maya felt the ground shifting beneath her feet again. What do you mean? I mean that under the terms of David's inheritance, if he's declared mentally incompetent, control of Chin Industries goes to the board of directors permanently. But if he voluntarily transfers his voting rights to someone else, he can reclaim them at any time by proving his competency. So transferring control to me was actually a strategic move to protect himself. It was brilliant. Maya, David gave you the power to save him from a psychiatric evaluation designed to destroy him. Maya stared at Richard, understanding finally that David's seemingly impulsive gesture had actually been carefully calculated. Richard, why are you telling me this? Because David is too honest to manipulate you, even to save himself. He won't tell you what to do with the voting rights because he wants your decision to be genuine. And you don't have the same scruples? Richard smiled. I want my cousin to keep control of his company and his life. Maya, if you vote with the board, David loses everything, his money, his company, and his freedom to make his own decisions. And if I vote with David? Then David retains control of Chin Industries and continues his plan to convert the company to peaceful technology. Maya thought about the research she'd done the night before, about the weapons that had been sold to oppressive regimes, about the refugee aid that David's donations had funded. Richard, what if David's plan to convert the company fails? What if it really does eliminate thousands of jobs and destabilize the defense industry? Then at least those will be David's mistakes to make, not decisions imposed on him by people who want to profit from weapons sales. Maya felt the weight of the choice settling on her shoulders again. Richard, I need to ask you something directly. What? Are you here because you genuinely care about David's well-being, or because you want something from Chin Industries? Richard was quiet for a long moment. Maya, I'm here because I've watched my cousin struggle with inherited wealth and inherited moral responsibility for 5 years. I've seen him try to find ways to use his money ethically, while being told by everyone around him that ethical business practices are mental illness. That's not an answer to my question. Maya, I own a clean energy company that would benefit significantly if Chin Industries converts to peaceful technology. So yes, I have financial motivations for wanting David to retain control. Maya appreciated his honesty. And Dr. Lawson? What are her real motivations? Dr. Lawson is being paid by a consortium of defense contractors who want to prevent David from disrupting their industry relationships. If David's board gains control of Chin Industries, they'll expand weapons production and eliminate David's charitable giving. Maya felt like she was finally beginning to understand the real stakes. So this isn't about David's mental health at all. This is about whether one person has the right to make moral decisions about inherited wealth, or whether corporate boards should make those decisions based on profit maximization. Maya looked around the coffee shop, at the students beginning to arrive for early classes, at the normal world that would be affected by whatever she decided in the courtroom later that morning. Richard, what happens if I refuse to vote either way? Then David's voting rights remain in your control indefinitely, and Chin Industries can't make any major decisions without your approval. Maya realized that refusing to choose was actually the most powerful choice of all. Richard, I need to see David before the hearing. He's waiting outside. Maya looked through the coffee shop window and saw David standing by a tree, hands in his pockets, looking like someone preparing for the most important conversation of his life. Richard, one more question. What? Do you really think David loves me, or do you think he's just grateful that I'm the only person who's treated him like a human being instead of a bank account? Richard's expression softened. Maya, I think David has been looking for someone who could see him clearly for his entire adult life. And I think you're the first person who's ever done that. As Maya walked toward David, she realized that her decision about his competency was really a decision about whether she trusted her own judgment about people. Because either David Chen was the most sophisticated manipulator she'd ever met, or he was exactly who he'd seemed to be when she'd first offered him a sandwich by the fountain. And Maya was about to find out which version of him was real. David stood under the oak tree where Maya had first seen him reading, but everything about him was different now. Gone was the uncertain vulnerability she'd grown to love, replaced by someone who carried himself with the quiet confidence of a man who'd made peace with impossible choices. "Maya," he said as she approached, "thank you for coming." "David, I need you to answer one question, and I need you to be completely honest. Always. When you first sat by that fountain, when you chose me specifically to approach, was it because you were lonely and I seemed kind, or was it because you were testing whether someone could love you for yourself?" David was quiet for so long that Maya thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a weight she hadn't heard before. "Maya, it was both. And it was something else too." "What?" "It was because I saw you eating lunch alone under this tree every day for 3 weeks, reading economics textbooks you'd obviously photocopied because you couldn't afford the originals, and I recognized something in you that I'd never seen in myself." "What did you recognize?" "The ability to find joy in learning despite circumstances that should have made you bitter. The strength to keep working toward something better even when the system seemed designed to defeat you." Maya felt something loosening in her chest. "David, that sounds like an answer you've practiced." "Maya, I've been practicing this conversation for 3 days because I needed to find a way to tell you that falling in love with you changed everything I thought I knew about myself." "How?" David stepped closer, and Maya could see exhaustion and hope warring in his expression. "Because for the first time in my adult life, I met someone who made me want to be worthy of being loved." "David, you were already worthy." "No, I wasn't. Maya, I inherited $14 billion, and for 5 years I used that money to make myself feel better about the weapons my company produces. I donated to refugee organizations while my board approved contracts to sell technology to the governments creating those refugees." Maya stared at him. "You were trying to have it both ways." "I was trying to ease my conscience without actually taking responsibility for changing anything." "Maya, meeting you made me realize that good intentions don't matter if you're not willing to accept the consequences of doing what's right. And now I'm willing to lose everything to stop being complicit in violence I have the power to prevent." Maya felt the weight of his words settling around them. "David, what if converting Chin Industries really does eliminate thousands of jobs? Then I'll use my personal wealth to retrain every displaced worker and help them find employment in peaceful industries. Maya, I'd rather be responsible for economic disruption than for the deaths my weapons technology enables." Maya looked at this man she'd fallen in love with over conversations about economics and sandwiches by a fountain, understanding finally that his transformation wasn't just about her. It was about him becoming someone he could live with being. "David, there's something I need to tell you." "What?" "I'm not going to vote on your competency." David's face went pale. "Maya, if you don't vote, the board. If I don't vote, I retain control of your voting shares indefinitely. Which means neither you nor your board can make unilateral decisions about Chin Industries." David stared at her. "Maya, you can't want that responsibility." "I don't want it. But I think it might be necessary." "What do you mean?" Maya pulled out her phone and showed David a document she'd been working on since her conversation with Richard. "David, what if there was a third option?" David read the screen, his expression shifting from confusion to amazement. "Maya, this is a proposal to convert Chin Industries to a benefit corporation with mandatory oversight from peace advocacy organizations and displaced worker representatives. You want to restructure the entire company. I want to create a system where weapons technology can't be produced without the explicit consent of people who understand the human cost of those weapons." David was scrolling through Maya's proposal, his expression shifting to something that looked like awe. "Maya, this is brilliant. It's complex and idealistic and probably impossible to implement, but it's brilliant." "David, do you think it could work?" "I think it's the first plan I've seen that actually addresses the root problem instead of just treating symptoms." Maya felt a surge of confidence. "Then let's propose it to the court." "Maya, are you sure about this? If we present this plan together, you become permanently connected to whatever happens with Chin Industries." Maya thought about the refugee aid organizations that David's donations had funded, about the weapons contracts that had displaced those same refugees, about the possibility of building something better from the ruins of something destructive. "David, I'm sure. But I need you to promise me something. Anything. Promise me that if this doesn't work, if the restructuring fails, or if the oversight becomes corrupted, you'll liquidate the entire company rather than let it return to weapons manufacturing." David's smile was the first genuine expression of joy Maya had seen from him. "Maya, I promise. Then let's go change the world." The courtroom was packed with reporters, corporate lawyers, and people Maya didn't recognize, but who looked like they had significant financial interests in the outcome. Dr. Lawson sat with a team of attorneys representing David's board, while David and Maya sat with Richard and a single lawyer who specialized in corporate restructuring. Judge Harrison reviewed the competing petitions for nearly an hour before addressing the court. "This case presents an unusual situation. We have a petition to declare Mr. Chen mentally incompetent, a counter-petition asserting his competency, and now a third proposal that appears to make the question of individual competency irrelevant." Dr. Lawson stood. "Your Honor, Mr. Chen's proposal to restructure his company demonstrates exactly the kind of grandiose, unrealistic thinking that characterizes his mental illness." Maya stood before her lawyer could stop her. "Your Honor, may I address the court? Miss Rodriguez, you're not an attorney." "No, Your Honor, but I am the person currently holding voting control of Chen Industries, and I have something to say about Mr. Chen's mental competency." Judge Harrison looked intrigued. "Proceed." Maya walked to the center of the courtroom, acutely aware that every decision she'd made over the past week had led to this moment. "Your Honor, I've known David Chen for exactly 1 week. In that time, I've watched him demonstrate more genuine concern for other people's welfare than most mentally healthy individuals show in a lifetime." Dr. Lawson started to object, but Judge Harrison waved her silent. Mr. Chen's decision to donate money to help struggling students wasn't impulsive. It was the logical response of someone who understands that access to education shouldn't depend on economic circumstances. His decision to transfer voting control to me wasn't grandiose. It was the strategic move of someone who recognized that he needed to protect his company from people who wanted to exploit his moral convictions. Maya turned to look at David, drawing strength from his encouraging nod. "Your Honor, the question isn't whether David Chen is mentally competent to control a weapons manufacturing company. The question is whether any individual should have that kind of power without accountability to the people affected by those decisions." Maya pulled out copies of her restructuring proposal and handed them to the court clerk. "Mr. Chen and I are proposing to convert Chen Industries to a benefit corporation with mandatory oversight from peace advocacy organizations and worker representation. This structure would prevent weapons sales to oppressive regimes while ensuring that any conversion to peaceful technology includes comprehensive support for displaced workers." The courtroom erupted in whispered conversations as people reviewed the proposal. Judge Harrison studied the documents for several minutes. "Miss Rodriguez, this is an extraordinarily complex restructuring plan. Are you prepared to take personal responsibility for overseeing this conversion?" Maya felt the weight of the question settling on her shoulders. She thought about Rebecca's mother, who'd built a career advocating for victims. About Professor Williams, who dedicated her life to helping students succeed despite systemic obstacles. About David, who was willing to lose everything to stop being complicit in violence. "Yes, Your Honor. I am. And Mr. Chen, you support this plan?" David stood. "Your Honor, I enthusiastically support any structure that prioritizes human welfare over profit maximization." Dr. Lawson stood again. "Your Honor, this proposal is evidence of shared delusion between two individuals who are both emotionally compromised." "Dr. Lawson," Judge Harrison interrupted, "I've reviewed your psychiatric evaluation, and I have some concerns about your methodology." "Your Honor." "Dr. Lawson, your evaluation relies heavily on surveillance data gathered without Mr. Chen's knowledge or consent. Furthermore, your conclusions about Mr. Chen's mental state appear to be predetermined rather than based on objective assessment." Maya watched Dr. Lawson's confidence cracking as Judge Harrison continued. "This court finds that Mr. Chen's recent decisions, while unconventional, demonstrate rational thinking and moral reasoning consistent with mental competency. Furthermore, Ms. Rodriguez's oversight proposal addresses the legitimate concerns about concentrated corporate power while respecting Mr. Chen's right to make his own decisions about his inheritance." Judge Harrison looked around the courtroom. "I'm approving the restructuring proposal and appointing Ms. Rodriguez as oversight coordinator for Chen Industries' conversion to peaceful technology." The courtroom erupted in chaos as reporters rushed to file stories and corporate lawyers frantically made phone calls. Maya felt David's hand slip into hers, warm and steady and real. "Maya," he said quietly, "do you understand what you just did? I think I just became responsible for converting a weapons manufacturing company into something that actually helps people. You just proved that sometimes the most radical thing you can do is trust your own judgment about what's right." Maya looked around the courtroom, at the reporters documenting their victory, at the corporate lawyers who'd failed to destroy David's autonomy, at Dr. Lawson, who was packing her files with obvious frustration. "David, I need to ask you something. What? Was any of this real? The connection we felt, the conversations by the fountain, the way you looked at me when you thought I wasn't watching." David's answer was to kiss her, right there in the middle of the courtroom, in front of reporters and lawyers and everyone who'd tried to manipulate their relationship for their own purposes. When they broke apart, Maya felt something she'd never experienced before. The absolute certainty that she was exactly where she belonged, doing exactly what she was meant to do, with exactly the person she was meant to love. "Maya," David said, "falling in love with you was the first authentic thing that's happened to me in 5 years. Everything else was complicated, but that was simple and true and real." As they left the courthouse together, Maya realized that her journey from struggling college student to corporate oversight coordinator wasn't just about David's wealth or her own capabilities. It was about learning that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is trust yourself enough to love someone despite all the reasons you shouldn't. And sometimes, when you're brave enough to do what's right instead of what's safe, you discover that you're stronger than you ever imagined possible. But what Maya didn't know yet was that converting a weapons manufacturing company to peaceful technology would be the easiest part of what lay ahead. Because changing corporate structure was nothing compared to changing the world. And David Chun and Maya Rodriguez were about to find out exactly how much two people could accomplish when they stopped hiding from their power and started using it intentionally. 2 years later, Maya stood in the renovated headquarters of Chun Industries, now officially renamed Harmony Technologies, watching through floor-to-ceiling windows as the last shipment of decommissioned weapons components left the facility. In their place, the loading docks were filled with solar panel arrays, water purification systems, and educational technology bound for refugee camps and underserved communities around the world. The transformation hadn't been easy. Converting a weapons manufacturing company to peaceful technology had required 18 months of legal battles, regulatory negotiations, and the kind of complex financial restructuring that kept Maya awake most nights. They'd faced lawsuits from defense contractors, protests from displaced workers, and skepticism from peace advocates who didn't trust that the conversion was genuine. But they'd also accomplished something unprecedented: the complete transformation of a major defense contractor into a benefit corporation dedicated to humanitarian technology. "Maya," David's voice came from behind her, warm with the affection that had deepened over 2 years of shared challenges. "The staff meeting is about to start." Maya turned to face the man she'd married 6 months ago in a ceremony held at the university fountain where they'd first met. David looked happier than she'd ever seen him, the haunted uncertainty of their early days replaced by the confident peace of someone who'd found his purpose. "How many people are we employing now?" Maya asked as they walked toward the conference room. 87,000 across 32 countries. "We've retrained every displaced defense worker who wanted to stay with the company, and we're hiring about 200 new people every month." Maya smiled, thinking about the employment statistics that had terrified her 2 years ago. "And the oversight board? Meets next week. The refugee advocacy representatives want to expand our water purification program, and the worker representatives are proposing profit-sharing increases." Maya felt the familiar satisfaction of problems being solved through collaborative decision-making rather than executive mandate. The oversight structure she designed wasn't perfect, but it ensured that Harmony Technologies couldn't make major decisions without input from the people most affected by those decisions. "Maya," David said as they reached the conference room, "I need to tell you something." "What?" "Professor Williams called this morning. The university wants to offer you an honorary doctorate in applied economics." Maya laughed. "David, I never even finished my undergraduate degree. Because you became too busy running a multinational corporation to attend classes." Maya thought about the path that had led her here, from struggling to afford textbooks to overseeing the conversion of a weapons manufacturer to peaceful technology. Do you think she'll understand if I ask for a rain check until after we finish the African water project? I think Professor Williams understands that some education happens outside classrooms. They entered the conference room, where the senior staff of Harmony Technologies was assembled. Engineers, project managers, community liaisons, and oversight coordinators from around the world. Maya still felt a jolt of amazement when she realized that all these brilliant, dedicated people were working together because she'd been brave enough to trust her judgment about a man she'd met by a fountain. "Good morning, everyone," Maya said, settling into her chair at the head of the table. "Richard, let's start with the quarterly impact report." Richard Chun, now Chief Operating Officer, stood with the kind of professional pride that came from meaningful work. In the past 3 months, our water purification systems have provided clean drinking water to 2.3 million people. Our educational technology has reached 890,000 students in refugee settlements. And our renewable energy projects have brought electricity to 150 previously unserviced communities. Maya felt the familiar surge of satisfaction that came from seeing abstract numbers translate into real human lives improved. Challenges: the usual. Government bureaucracy, supply chain disruptions, and regulatory compliance in 32 different countries. But nothing we haven't handled before. Dr. Chun. Maya turned to David, who now served as Chief Innovation Officer. What's next for research and development? David's excitement was visible as he pulled up holographic displays showing prototype designs. Medical diagnostic equipment that works without reliable electricity. Portable schools that can be deployed in crisis situations. And Maya, we've had a breakthrough in desalination technology that could bring fresh water to coastal regions affected by climate change. Maya studied the designs, automatically calculating implementation costs, regulatory requirements, and community impact assessments. Timeline for pilot programs? 18 months for the medical equipment, 2 years for the portable schools, and we're hoping to start desalination trials next month. Maya nodded, then looked around the table at the faces of people who'd chosen to dedicate their careers to using technology for humanitarian purposes. Any other business? Elena Rodriguez, Maya's former roommate and now director of community outreach, raised her hand. "Maya, we've received another request for consultation." "What kind of consultation?" "Petrobras Industries wants to hire us to convert their oil refining operations to renewable energy production." Maya felt the familiar thrill of possibility. Timeline and scope? 3-year conversion, affecting 45,000 workers across 7 countries. They're offering complete decision-making authority over the conversion process. Maya looked at David, seeing her own excitement reflected in his expression. "What do you think?" "I think we're about to prove that what we did with Chin Industries wasn't a fluke." As the meeting continued, Maya felt a deep satisfaction in the routine of meaningful work. This was what she'd been searching for without knowing it. The ability to solve complex problems with people she trusted, in service of values she believed in. After the meeting, Maya found herself walking alone through the research and development labs, watching engineers test prototypes that would improve lives in communities she'd probably never visit. The irony wasn't lost on her. 2 years ago, she'd been struggling to afford a single textbook, and now she was overseeing the development of technology that could affect millions of people. "Maya!" David's voice made her turn. He was standing in the doorway, holding 2 cups of coffee and wearing the expression he got when he was about to say something important. "What?" "I love you." Maya laughed. "David, we've been married for 6 months. I should hope so." "No, I mean I love who you've become. I love watching you solve problems that most people would consider impossible. I love the way you think about complex systems and human needs simultaneously." Maya took the coffee he offered, feeling the warmth of his words settling around her like an embrace. "David, do you ever miss the simplicity of our early conversations? When the biggest problem we had to solve was whether you were mentally competent." "Never. Maya, falling in love with you was simple. Building a life with you has been the most complex and rewarding thing I've ever done." Maya's phone buzzed with a text from Professor Williams. Maya saw the news about Petrobras. "Proud of you. Your old economics textbook is now part of the curriculum. Required reading about applied humanitarian economics. Maya showed the text to David, who smiled. "The textbook you couldn't afford to buy is now required reading. The textbook that started everything." They walked together toward the executive offices, past walls displaying photos of communities served by Harmony Technologies projects. Maya paused at a particularly striking image. Children in a Syrian refugee camp using tablet computers powered by Harmony Technologies solar arrays. David, do you think we're actually making a difference? Maya, look around. We've converted a weapons manufacturing company into technology that saves lives. We've created a corporate structure that prioritizes human welfare over profit maximization. We've proven that business can be a force for justice instead of exploitation. Maya studied the photo, thinking about the children whose educations were being supported by technology that had once been used to create the conflicts that displaced them. And personally, do you think we're happy? David stopped walking and turned to face her fully. Maya, 2 years ago I was pretending to be homeless because I didn't know how to have authentic relationships with people who knew about my wealth. Today I'm married to someone who fell in love with me before she knew I had money, and we're spending our lives building something that makes the world better. That sounds like a yes. That's the most definitive yes I've ever given to any question. Maya felt something settling in her chest. Not just happiness, but the deep satisfaction of a life aligned with her values. David, what's next for us? Well, we convert Petrobras Industries. We expand the oversight model to other companies. We prove that corporate responsibility isn't just idealistic fantasy. And personally, David's smile was mischievous. Personally, I was thinking we might want to start a family. Find out if we can raise children who understand that privilege comes with responsibility. Maya felt tears starting, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming recognition that her life had become something she'd never dared to imagine possible. David Chun, are you asking if I want to have babies with you? Maya Chun, I'm asking if you want to raise the next generation of people who will inherit the power to change the world. Maya kissed him, right there in the hallway of the company they'd built together, surrounded by evidence of what two people could accomplish when they stopped hiding from their power and started using it intentionally. As they broke apart, Maya realized that her journey from struggling student to corporate leader wasn't really about wealth or success or even love. It was about learning to trust herself enough to make decisions based on her values rather than her fears. It was about understanding that real power came not from hiding who you were, but from becoming who you were meant to be. And it was about discovering that sometimes the most radical thing you can do is believe that the world can be better than it is, and then spend your life proving that belief true. 2 years ago, Maya Rodriguez couldn't afford a textbook. Today, Maya Chen was rewriting the rules about how global corporations could serve human needs instead of exploiting them. Tomorrow, she and David would start working on their next impossible project, proving that love and justice and practical idealism could reshape entire industries. But first, they were going to have dinner at the campus fountain where they'd first met, surrounded by students who had access to textbooks because of the emergency fund David had established, in a world that was incrementally better because two people had been brave enough to trust each other with the truth. Because sometimes the most powerful love stories aren't about finding your perfect match. They're about finding someone who makes you brave enough to become your best self, and then building something together that's larger than either of you could have imagined alone. And sometimes, when you're willing to risk everything for what you believe in, you discover that you're stronger than you ever knew possible, and that the world is more ready for change than anyone imagined. What did this story teach you about the courage it takes to trust your own judgment about people, and the power that comes from using privilege and resources to serve justice rather than personal comfort? Drop your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more stories that will change how you see the world. ***. 6 months after the Petrobras conversion began, Maya and David received an encrypted message from an anonymous source. There are 12 other defense contractors preparing to fight your model. They're not just protecting profit margins. They're protecting power structures that reach into governments worldwide. What you've started is bigger than you know. Be careful who you trust. The message included financial documents suggesting that the resistance to corporate conversion was being coordinated at levels that would make their previous challenges look simple. But that's a story for another day. A story about what happens when changing the world makes you a target for people who profit from keeping it broken.